Environmental policy is one of the most critical areas where government power directly impacts society. Throughout history, governments have played a central role in shaping how natural resources are managed, how industries operate within ecological limits, and how citizens interact with their environment. The extent and nature of governmental authority determine the effectiveness of environmental protection efforts, with stronger regulatory frameworks typically leading to more robust conservation and sustainability measures. However, corporate influence, political ideology, and economic pressures often shape the degree to which governments prioritize environmental policy. Governments have long been involved in regulating the use of natural resources and protecting the environment. From early conservation efforts in the 19th century to modern climate change policies, state intervention has often been necessary to address market failures that lead to environmental degradation. One of the earliest examples of government-led environmental policy in the United States was the creation of the national park system in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Under Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, the government expanded its role in conservation, recognizing that private interests were rapidly depleting natural resources for short-term profit. The establishment of the National Park Service in 1916 signaled a shift in governmental responsibility, affirming that protecting natural spaces was in the public interest. The New Deal era of the 1930s further reinforced the correlation between government power and environmental protection. President Franklin D. Roosevelt introduced policies aimed at restoring degraded lands, such as the Civilian Conservation Corps and the Tennessee Valley Authority, which provided employment while addressing deforestation, soil erosion, and water management. These programs demonstrated that government intervention could successfully balance economic development and environmental conservation. The mid-20th century saw a significant increase in governmental environmental regulation, largely in response to growing public awareness of pollution and ecological damage. The publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 highlighted the dangers of industrial pesticides and spurred calls for stricter environmental oversight. In response, the U.S. government took major legislative steps, including the Clean Air Act, established regulations to limit air pollution from industries and vehicles. The Clean Water Act set national standards for water quality and pollution control. The Endangered Species Act provided federal protection for species at risk of extinction. The establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970 created a federal body specifically tasked with enforcing environmental laws. These policies highlight how government power, when exercised effectively, can lead to significant improvements in environmental protection. Strong governmental action during this period was largely driven by public demand, scientific research, and political will to address pressing environmental issues. Despite the successes of environmental regulation, governmental power in this domain has been consistently challenged by corporate interests and political opposition. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have seen increasing efforts to weaken environmental protections, often under the justification of promoting economic growth and reducing regulatory burdens. Large corporations, particularly in industries like fossil fuels, logging, and real estate development, have historically opposed strong environmental regulations. The business plot of the 1930s, in which wealthy elites allegedly conspired to overthrow FDR due to his economic policies, serves as an early example of corporate pushback against government intervention. While that plot failed, corporate resistance to regulation has persisted through legal and political means. In modern times, fossil fuel companies spend millions lobbying against climate policies and funding campaigns that support deregulation. For example, companies like ExxonMobil and Koch Industries have been linked to efforts to discredit climate science and weaken environmental laws. This demonstrates how corporate power can undermine government efforts to address environmental challenges. The correlation between government power and environmental policies is also influenced by political ideology. Conservative and libertarian-leaning administrations often prioritize deregulation, arguing that excessive government intervention stifles business and economic growth. This was evident during the Trump administration, which rolled back numerous environmental protections, including reducing the scope of the Clean Water Act, allowing more industrial pollution in waterways, weakening fuel efficiency standards, leading to increased greenhouse gas emissions, opening federal lands for oil and gas drilling, reducing public land protections. These actions illustrate how changes in government leadership directly impact environmental policies. When government power is used to deregulate rather than protect, environmental degradation tends to follow. Global perspectives: government power in environmental leadership. The role of government in environmental policy is not unique to the United States. Around the world, different governance models have led to varying outcomes in environmental protection. European Union. The EU has some of the strongest environmental regulations globally, with strict emissions targets and renewable energy mandates. Government intervention has led to significant progress in reducing pollution and promoting sustainability. China. While historically known for its environmental challenges, China has recently expanded government-led environmental policies, investing heavily in renewable energy and setting ambitious carbon neutrality goals. However, enforcement remains inconsistent. Brazil. The Brazilian government's stance on environmental policy fluctuates based on leadership. Under President Jair Bolsonaro, deforestation in the Amazon increased due to weakened government protections, whereas past administrations had enforced stricter conservation policies. These examples show that government power, when wielded effectively, can lead to environmental improvements, but when weakened or influenced by corporate interests, it can lead to environmental harm. The future of government power in environmental protection. Looking forward, the relationship between government power and environmental policy will be crucial in addressing climate change and resource conservation. The growing threat of climate change demands stronger governmental action, including expanding renewable energy investments and reducing reliance on fossil fuels, strengthening international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord, enforcing stricter regulations on industries contributing to deforestation, pollution, and biodiversity loss. However, challenges remain. Corporate lobbying, political divisions, and economic pressures continue to hinder progress. The question remains, will governments take stronger action to address environmental crises, or will corporate influence and deregulation continue to weaken environmental policies? The correlation between government power and environmental policies is evident throughout history. When governments exercise strong regulatory authority, environmental protections tend to strengthen, leading to conservation and sustainability. However, when corporate influence and deregulation dominate policymaking, environmental degradation often follows. As climate change and ecological destruction accelerate, the role of government in shaping environmental policies will be more critical than ever. The future depends on how governments balance economic interests with the urgent need for environmental action.